Hello. So this kind of just came to me and it feels important to share, so I will. For a long time, I used to be afraid of being seen as crazy, being seen as weird, being seen as different, being seen as unique and alien in some kind of way. I have a really big wound and issue with that personally. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I've always stuck out like a sore thumb in life. I've always been somebody who is kind of like the black sheep. I've always been somebody that people point out, whether it's in a positive or negative way. You know, in some ways it's positive, and that's, you know, it can be an amazing experience, but it still can feel very isolating. It can feel very alienating. It can feel very strange. Even if people are putting you on a pedestal, I think that's like a very strange place to live. And when it's negative, of course, when it's negative, which, you know, for much of my experience, it was negative, being treated as if I was other, being treated as if, again, I was alien, as if something was wrong with me, as if, you know, there's something I needed to fix within me to make sense of what I am or who I am or whatever, what encompasses me as a whole, so that I can make it more malleable and make it make sense to others. And one of those things that, like I said, for a very long time scared me and made me feel very self-conscious was that idea of being crazy, because, you know, I've always been a very creative person. I've always done things. When I was in music school, I actually had a teacher who said that teaching me was like having opposite day. It's because I did everything backwards. I did everything differently from everybody else. And the way I process things, the way I put things together, my creativity, my output on all of this stuff, it was so unique and so my own individual that it was very confusing to other people. And for the longest time, it's just that idea of feeling like I'm crazy, I'm doing things wrong, everyone tells me it's wrong, people don't like me, people are being mean to me, people are spreading rumors about me, people are claiming I'm an alcoholic, a drug addict, people are claiming I'm cruel, people are spreading lies about me, people are saying all this cruel stuff and really making me feel crazy, really making me feel, and obviously this is just a small side point, but, you know, nobody can make you feel any sort of way. I felt crazy because these experiences were coming to me to highlight that internal issue that I always had. I always thought that I was crazy. I always thought that something was wrong with me. I always thought that it was bad to be different or other. And even when it was considered good, I always felt strange about it being seen as good, as if people were putting me, like idolizing me almost, or putting me in a different category, putting me on this pedestal, putting me in a place where I was dehumanized. But going back to that craziness, you know, everybody's crazy. That's just the truth. Every single person on this planet is crazy. Every single person on this planet has things that drive them absolutely fucking nuts. It drives them absolutely fucking bonkers. It makes them turn into a monster. It can make them hostile or defensive. It can make them paranoid. It can make them narcissistic. It can make them manipulative. It can make them unstable. It can make them, you know, go beyond the normal limits of what life and what society views as normal, or what people want to view as good or moral or righteous or anything along those lines. And it can be in any career, any relationships, any institution, any, you know, it can be anywhere. Anywhere where people are constantly forcing themselves to question that internal thing that honestly I think is a part of your drive. It's a part of this internal intuition system and aliveness within us that is categorized as crazy. It's a wildness. It's a primal thing that everybody has within them, an energy, an aura, an expression that becomes tainted and stigmatized and seen as wrong and seen as bad. No, stop. You gotta chastise it. You gotta slap it on the wrist. You gotta question it constantly and ridicule it, criticize it, abuse it, put it together, lock it in a cage, and make it see that this is wrong and this is right, and don't do this and do that, and blah, blah, blah. And we all have that within us. It's, you know, it's ingrained in us. Sometimes it's ingrained in us by our family. Sometimes it's ingrained in us by our friends. Sometimes it's ingrained in us in school, at work, social situations. Sometimes we ingrain it in ourselves just by observing patterns in the world, observing different things that are going on, and seeing like, okay, well, this gets a good reaction. This gets a reaction that feeds my ego, or feeds my sadness, or feeds my wounds. This gives a reaction that benefits my insecurities, or benefits this, or benefits that, and makes you, you know, simultaneously feel good because you're feeding that doubt, you're feeding that self-abuser almost in you, but at the same time drives you even crazier. It makes you, you know, lose sleep. It makes you feel alienated, like I said earlier, isolated, misunderstood, confused, lost, insecure, you know, worthless, unlovable, all, you know, all sorts of things, paranoid, you know, that people can go through, all sorts of emotions, just because we continuously deny that wild, unbridled, pure, untouched part of ourselves that is integral to who we are as human beings. Everyone's crazy. We all are. We're all crazy. And I think the more that we're able to tap into our crazy, the more that we're able to embrace that crazy and actually allow for it to come through, that we can use it in ways that is so beneficial just to our own health, our own mental health, our own lives, our creativity, our energy, our drive in any sort of way. I'm thinking work drive, I'm thinking sex drive, I'm thinking all sorts of stuff like that. If we embrace that craziness within us, if we embrace this monster that we're constantly whipping and snapping and telling to get into shape and telling to do all this stuff, that crazy is our lifeline. That crazy is our fucking life force. And I think too, and this might be another video that I will do eventually, I think too, is that when we think of crazy, especially in the world, we think of women, we think of emotions, we think of this wild, feral, natural, innocent sort of energy that is ignorant and wise at the same time, and has this instinctual aspect that it would be considered, and just talking about the energy here, I'm not speaking about gender or anything like that, but would be considered inherently stereotypically feminine. And people, I mean, as we all know, people have such a problem with feminine energy. Women especially, just in general, in society, women who, you know, biological women, women who were not born women, men, lots of people have a problem with feminine energy, the idea of feminine energy, because it's constantly labeled as crazy. It's constantly labeled as it needs to be tamed. It's constantly labeled like it needs to be controlled. And in a way, you can control it. You can make it work for you. And I think that's just the point of having a balance in things. It's less about controlling it and telling it what to do and locking it up and making it hide. It's about using its strengths, its vulnerability, its creativity, its energy, its trust, its intuition, its loving nature, its true unconditional love. Its core of what it is, the core of that crazy is something that literally brings creation into the world. It brings creation into life. So, you know, lean into it. Lean into your crazy. You know, I think a big part of me posting these videos and talking about this stuff, and something that even kind of worried me in the past, was about even talking about spiritual things, or just sharing my thoughts, or sharing like little intuitive things that I feel like I experience or want to talk about, is that you worry about sounding crazy. You worry about people being like, oh, this person's a fucking loony. Like, why are they talking about all this stuff? That's weird. Oh, or, you know, words and communication and language can be very limiting. Like, language is one of the biggest blockers to connection. You can really misunderstand people. People, especially nowadays, are so obsessed with semantics. They're so obsessed with little itty-bitty things to try and twist and manipulate and make words and language and stuff work for them in a way that makes them more comfortable. It makes them less triggered and less prone to opening up their hearts. And, you know, I can understand from that end why hearing somebody talk about this stuff, and they can look at me and be like, this bitch is crazy. She's nuts. Why is she talking about this stuff? What does this have anything to do with life or being crazy or society, spirituality, all the stuff, even psychology, anything? What does that have to do with any of this stuff? You know, so I can understand it from that way. And for a long time, I judged myself and I thought those things too. But at the end of the day, I think I've never been more connected to myself and what it means to be human than when I've allowed myself to speak these things out, to have these conversations, to be able to connect with people who understand it and have had these experiences too. And I think the more that we're willing to embrace our crazy, the more that we're willing to step into that crazy, and also to have empathy for that crazy in other people. And I mean, too, for the people that nobody wants to have empathy for, like, for example, the homeless, or people who are suffering from severe addiction, substance abuse, all sorts of stuff like that. People hate to empathize with that kind of crazy. People are afraid of that kind of unconscious collective energy. They are afraid of that loudspeaker megaphone of the unconscious collective in society speaking out to them. It scares them, but it's really just the echo chamber of all of us combined trying so hard to express that crazy. And I think the more we lean into it, the more we embrace it, the more we allow for our crazy to have a voice, to be channeled in ways that are beneficial and helpful and even healing and supportive for ourselves and others, we're going to connect deeper. We're going to have not only a deeper connection to ourselves, but to the planet and to every single person here. And I mean, that's really the point of being here, right? It's like, as much as we don't want to acknowledge it, we're here to connect, and we're here to get to know people and also get to know ourselves on a deeper level. And we can't do that unless we embrace all of these aspects of ourselves. If we embrace the part of ourselves that's squeaky clean and nice and ideal and, I guess, utopian in that sort of sense, the perfect you, but you also have to embrace that messy, crazy, insane, you know, parts of you that society shuns and people look away from, people don't want to see, people don't want to hear, people don't want to engage with. Lean into that fucking crazy, okay? We're all crazy, even if we don't want to admit it, and that's okay.